Welcome to Verbal Peak Radio, where we give you a verbal image of life, and we are everyday people. I'd like to welcome you all to the show. What inspired me to do this particular show is to an event I went to the other day. And at that event, it was a Arab Christmas party dedicated to the police force, right? And I was hearing them talk about the accomplishments and the things that they endured when they first got to the Americas. And we're talking about 70s, 80s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. And they were naming off Jordan and Libya and some African countries, Morocco and whatnot, right? But I didn't hear anything about the foundation, the early Muslims that set the foundation for the later arrival Muslims who came to America. And so what I'm talking about, I would like for the Muslim community to incorporate this history into their schools, into their curriculum, because it's very important. If you're going to write a story about early Muslims and Islam in America, then you have to tell the whole story. If you do not tell the whole story, then you are depriving those of a proper education. Meaning you just only giving 30%, 40% of what really took place. So let us here on Verbal Peak Radio help with some information. And from this information, I hope you will go and research it, and you can package it the way you like to introduce it to your students. But yet it's needed material. Muslims were part of the U.S. from its very beginnings. Among those who served under the command of Chief of the Continental Army, General George Washington, in the war against British colonialism was Bampett, which is Muhammad, which is Bampett, Muhammad. And he spelled his Muhammad Muhammad. He fought for the Virginia line between the years 1775 and 1783. This is a black Muslim in the 1700s. Also, Yusuf bin Ali, who was a North African Arab, another black man. Some have claimed that Peter Buckminster, who fired the gun that killed British Major General John Pitcairn, which is Pitcairn, at the Battle of Bunker Hill, and later went on to serve in the Battle of Saratoga and the Battle of Stony Point, was a Muslim American. Now, it says, by giving these Muslims the honor of serving America, Washington made it clear that a person did not have to be of a certain religion or have a particular ethnic background to be an American patriot. Now, I saw so many Muslims from the Middle East that were in law enforcement, right? So many Muslims from the Middle East that are currently serving in the military in the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guards, you name it. But that was only made possible by what I just read. They were honored for serving America. And at that time, this is 1700s, George Washington made it clear that a person did not have to be of a certain religion or have a particular ethnic background to be an American patriot, meaning serving in what they call public service. Right? These were Muslims who helped to create the foundation of America, and they were known as Moors, Mohammedans, Black Muslims, African American Muslims. Well, not African American, but African Muslims, because some came to the Americas by way of the slave trade. Also, that has to be taught. And the reason being is because you have some younger Muslims coming out of Morocco or Jordan or Iran who don't see the value of the blacks that were already here in America that are Muslims. They kind of, give that little, yeah, you Muslim, but you're not Orthodox Islam, right? But the foundation of Muslims in America was built on the backs of the blacks in America that were Muslim, right? The teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad needs to be taught in the curriculum for the schools. That's the foundation. That's part of the foundation of Islam in America. Now, Islam has been a piece of the American religious fabric since the first settlers arrived in North America. Right. African Muslims were enslaved and transported to the New World. There are clues in legal doctrines, slaveholder documents, and existing cultural and religious traditions. African Muslims were caught in the middle of complicated social and legal attitudes from the very moment they landed on our eastern shores, and collections at the museum help provide insight into their lives. Now, I got a problem with landing on our eastern shores because the shores belong to natives and Muslims in the beginning. Now, this is Charles Ball. This is 1837. I knew several people who must have been, from what I have since learned, Mohammedans, Muslims. Though at that time I had never heard of the religion of Muhammad, there was one man on this plantation who prayed 5 times every day, always turning his face to the east when in the performance of his devotion. Charles Ball, 1837. African Muslims were an integral part of creating America, from mapping its borders to fighting against British rule. Muslims first came to America in the 1500s as part of colonial expeditions. One of these explorers, Mustafa Zamora, also known as Estevanico, which is, I did a whole story on him. Estevanico means Little Stephen. He was the founder, or he founded New Mexico and Arizona. They say he was sold by Portuguese into slavery in 1522, while enslaved by Spanish conquistadors Andres Dorantes de Carranza, Estevanico became one of the first Africans to set foot on the North American continent. He explored Florida and the Gulf Coast eventually traveling as far west as New Mexico. A little bit more about him was, no, his ship wrecked in Galveston. He saved, check this out, he saved the Portuguese on that ship because when he landed in Galveston, check this out, when he landed in Galveston, the natives that were here in Galveston, Texas, was getting ready to kill everybody on the ship. But the reason they didn't kill everybody on the ship because Esteban or Mustafa Zamora heard him speaking Arabic. He started speaking Arabic, and then they called him Big Medicine, and that's how they survived. That's the story. Now, African Muslims also fought alongside colonists during the Revolutionary War. Multiple men with Muslim names appear on the military muster rolls, and including Bampet Muhammad, Yusuf bin Ali, also known as Joseph bin Haley, and Joseph Saba. Other men listed on the muster rolls have names that are likely connected to Islamic practice, such as Salim and Peter Salim, whose names may reflect a form of the Arabic salam, meaning peace, right? They distinguished themselves on the battlefield. The founding fathers were aware of Islam and the presence of Muslims in America. Thomas Jefferson, who owned a copy of the Quran, included Islam in many of his early writings and political treaties. Campaigning for religious freedom in Virginia, Jefferson argued in the proposed Virginia statute for religious freedom that neither pagan nor Mohammedan, which is Muslim, nor Jew ought to be excluded from the civil rights of Commonwealth because of his religion. Unfortunately, this language was amended before ratification to remove references to non-Christian groups. Jefferson was not the only statesman who recognized religions other than Christianity in his works. However, their knowledge of the theatrical openness to Islam did not stop them from enslaving African Muslims. You got the book, The Life of Muhammad, with sketches of the reigns of his successors. Abu Bakr, Omar, Uthman, and Ali. The book written in 1805. Right? In America, true freedom embraces the Mohammedan Muslims and the Gentoo Hindu as well as Christian religions. 1784. This was Richard Henry Lee letter to James Madison. Despite significant obstacles, enslaved Muslims used their faith and bilingual literacy to build community, resist slavery, and pursue freedom. Now, I hate to say it, but to my Christian family, Muslims in America fought for the freedom of slavery before anybody, but yet are blocked out of history. So, and this is another dynamic that a story that has to be told if we're going to do this thing right. And let me digress for a minute. So I heard on the news today that President Biden is going to create legislature on protecting or against anti-Semitic rhetoric or speech or violence, and which is good. But the key thing is to take that, I don't know his name, hell, I forgot his name, that historian that they have on CNN from Princeton, and define the terms of what do they mean by, or what is a Semite. Now we not the term Semite that we know of anyone who spoke the original Semitic language, such as Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic, then that would include black people as well. But if there's a new term because of technology on what a Semite is, then let the public know so we can clear up some things and persons like Kyrie Irving. And the lady even said that Kyrie Irving shared a link to documentaries now, like he did more than one. And the one he shared was Hebrew to Negroes. And I understood why he shared it after I watched it, because we're not interested into anything that's negative rhetoric or what we would call ranking on any. I don't even know after this debate, do we call them European Jews? Do we distinguish the European Jews from the black Jews, or do we say Jews is Jews? And this is the problem we have in the Islamic community. They're trying to say that Islam is strictly for the lighter skinned Muslims, or like if you see Morocco today, that's not how majority of the people looked in Morocco, at a previous time. It was mostly dark skinned. Now you see a lighter skinned, just like Egypt as well. But Islam is Islam, so there should be no discrimination. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, loved Bilal, right? And he also said 3 generations after him would no longer be of him. So it would be sad, is what I'm saying, for, I would say, Middle Eastern Muslims to take on or to adopt any form of racism against black people in America, when the black Muslims in America created the foundation for you all to walk on, to serve in the military, right? To do certain things. So I just wanted to add that into it, though. But Bao Ali Muhammad and Saleh Bilal Ali were known to be intimate friends. Omar Ibn Said and Layman Kibi wrote letters to one another, and Ayuba Salim Diala sent an Arabic letter to his father in Africa. They also wrote pages of Arabic for their slaveholders and their friends, but instead of writing what the recipients believed was a Bible verse or the Lord's Prayer, they wrote Quranic verses that condemned slavery, made genealogical lists, and even pleaded to return home to Africa. Indeed, I wish to be seen again in our land called Africa, a place of the sea called Gambia. Right? Whoa. What, did y'all see that? Right. In our land, right? In our land called Africa. In a place of the sea called Gambia. Right. Okay. And they got the Arabic verses that he wrote. Right. Yeah. See? Yeah. It says these 2 documents incorrectly labeled the 23rd Psalms and the Lord's Prayer provide insight into the methods of resistance used by enslaved Muslims. Muslims also use literacy to leverage their freedom through their labor. Slave owners exploited Muslims' ability to read and write, as well as their professional backgrounds. So enslaved Muslims used jobs such as bookkeepers, personal servants, and coachmen to gain physical mobility, learn American business practices, and access information normally only shared within white society. The Yarrow Mount, that's Yarrow Mamout, the Yarrow Mammoth of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., was one such example. Mamout, right, was a Muslim enslaved by the Bell family, was known as a jack of all trades. He made charcoal, worked on the ship Maryland, weaved baskets, and made bricks. He was able to earn his own money from these endeavors, and a brick-making agreement with Bell's wife eventually led to a manumission in April 1807. After 44 years of being enslaved, Marmot became an entrepreneur, bank investor, and homeowner in Georgetown, where he would walk the streets singing the praises of Allah. Now, Ohio, before it was Ohio, it was Mecca, right? You had Muslim towns in America. You had a Medina in America, and you had a Medina in Ohio and a Mecca in Ohio before it was Ohio, right? So why? So that's why when you see the Moors staking claim to certain things and certain treaties, they understand that, hell, we've been here. That they tried to change our names and give us a history that they want us to have, but they failed to realize that the way that we taught each other was verbal from one generation to the next generation. So the history was verbally taught, right? And at one point, every family had a griot who would teach the wisdom of the history and pass it down to the next generation. So those who say, well, I'm Moor, and they come to the government and say, hey, you can't do this and we want to do this, they just, it's natural, right? It's natural because the descendants of Muslims that's black in America naturally gonna fight for freedom and want to own this and want to build this and want to have jurisdiction over this, and because it's in the blood. Look, Yarrow owns a house and lots and is known by most of the inhabitants of Georgetown. He professes to be a Mohammedan, a Muslim, and is often seen and heard in the streets singing praises to God. Charles Wilson Peel, 1818. However, Muslims also experience open hostility and hardship when practicing their faith. Ayuba Suleiman Diallo was pelted with dirt by a white boy in Kent Island, Maryland, as he prayed. Others was forced to wear sacrilegious clothing, ignored dietary rules and religious fasting, or abstain from the required prayers. An unnamed Moorish slave in Louisiana confirmed this hardship in 1822 when he lamented that his situation as a slave in America prevents him from obeying the dictates of his religion. Nevertheless, they preserved and lived their faith. Many became pseudo-converts to Christianity called Taqiyya, which is Taqiyah. A Taqiyya is a pseudo-convert to Christianity, meaning they didn't want to convert to Christianity, but they pseudo-convert to Christianity to save themselves, to protect themselves and their families, and they had to hide their true beliefs. Layman Kibbe pretended to convert to Christianity to secure passage back to Africa through the American Colonization Society. However, after returning to Africa, Kibbe disappeared into Sierra Leone, surely still retaining his Mohammedan creed. Others like Ayuba Suleiman Diallo refused to budge in their fate and rewarded for it. His fate impressed his slave owner so much that he was freed and provided passage back to Africa, receiving a royal welcome in England on the way. Right? So the Islam brought to America by enslaved Africans did not survive long, but it left traces that are still visible today. The practice of ring shout, a form of religious dance in which men and women rotate counterclockwise while singing, clapping their hands, and shuffling their feet, was directly inherited from enslaved Muslims such as Bilal Ali Muhammad and Cecilia Bilal in Georgia Sea Island. It originally mimicked the ritual circling or shout, S-H-A-W-T, of the Kaaba in Mecca by Muslim pilgrims. Interviews of formerly enslaved people collected by the Works Progress Administration in the 1930s contain reminiscence of rice cakes called saraka, S-A-R-A-K-A, which was handed out during rituals and feast days. From the Arabic word sadiqa, or free will offering, this charity is an aspect of zakat, which is charity, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and early blues singers, like those recorded by ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax and Levi Kemp Holler, employed singing styles reminiscent of the Adhan, A-D-H-A-N, or call to prayer. They use sweeping and extended vocalization to fill the words with intense emotion. This is coming out of Islam. We practice the dances today. You may call it do-sit-do, or some call it the Harlem Shuffle or the Four Corners, or a different electric slide, but the foundation. That's why it says, that's why they say that they're Muslims, but they don't know that they're Muslims. Enslaved Muslims were brought to the United States with distinct cultural and religious beliefs. They succeeded in forming networks and communities, and they maintained their religious identity despite overwhelming odds. The material culture Muslims left behind, books, writing, clothing, beads, and rugs, help tell their story today, as Katie Brown, the great-granddaughter of Bilal Ali Muhammad, recalled these objects were an integral part of their religious practice and identity. Right? Bilal and his wife, Phoebe, pray on the bead. They was very particular about the time they pray, and they very regular about the hour. When the sun come up, when it's straight overhead, and when it's set, that the time they pray. They bow to the sun and have a little mat to kneel on. The bead is on a long string. Bilal, he pull a bead and he say, Balambe Hakarabara. Muhammadu Phoebe, she say, Amen, Amen. This is 1940, Katie Brown. They got the objects, they got the prayer rug, right? Layla Muhammad, daughter of Imam Waradin Muhammad. Come on. The life of Muhammad. The prayer beads. Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad. All very important. Look, they were collecting this stuff. The call of prayer has been silent for more than 500 years in America. Y'all not teaching this history in your curriculum in your Islamic schools throughout America. I'm talking about all Muslims. I don't care if you from Libya, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, Morocco, none of that. If you're not teaching, and you in America, and you're not teaching this history, you are doing your students a great disservice, because this is Islamic history. That's Jerusalem. That's founded in peace. That meaning Muslims, Christians, Jews, whatever your religious practice is freely and should be freely practiced under the ideal of Jerusalem. But if one comes in and controls it and says, well, this is Islam, and Islam is the dominant religion and nobody else can practice their religion, then that's not Jerusalem. If a Christian does it, a Jew, anybody who goes up there and says that it's either this way or the highway, that's not Jerusalem. That's not what it's about. Because the God is the God. And however you seek to praise the God, it shouldn't offend nobody else because God is God, right? But you can tell when someone is not doing what they're doing and just using the name of God, but they practices is the reflection of Satan, then you can call it out. And that's a problem, right? But teach this information, and it's not, and you're not, how can I say, being disrespectful to your people by teaching the history of the foundation of Islam, which was created by black Muslims in America going back to the 1500s. Morocco was the first nation to recognize America and protect American ships while it was in the water. It's got a standing treaty till this day. We trying to get them to honor it. Right? But we know about Morocco, meaning we know about the fathers of Morocco. So give thanks to the fathers. Let the people know that you're proud. You can't snuff your nose like you're not proud because you wouldn't have the foundation to stand on if it wasn't for them. Verbal Pick Radio. We're out.